I started a YouTube channel about 5 months ago after I left my job as a senior product manager at Amazon. That's a whole nother story we'll get into later. But overall, I had this vision. I wanted to talk about science and technology and the big ideas, the stuff that always lit my brain on fire. So I did it. I hit record, I uploaded, I waited, I refreshed the analytics, nothing. And if I'm being honest, no one actually watched. Like literally no one. Okay, maybe a few people watched. Thanks, Mom. Appreciate that. And some of the comments said I was boring. Fair enough. Comments don't lie, right? Maybe. But here's the thing. I've seen people on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, just as monotone, just as awkward, just as nerdy, and they're pulling millions of views. So I thought, well, like anyone that's been dumped and you heard it's not you, it's me, maybe it's not me. Maybe it's marketing. Maybe it's thumbnails. Maybe it's the colors, or maybe the title. Maybe it's not that I'm boring. Maybe I'm just being outmaneuvered by neurochemistry. And that kicked off a deep, spiraling, brain-melting journey into neuroscience, psychology, and the invisible ways our decisions get hijacked. So in this episode, I'm not here to show you how-tos for YouTube, because I gotta be honest, I still have no idea how YouTube works. But what I do want to show you is how much of your life, your scrolling, your buying, your choices might actually be influenced long before you realize it. Because honestly, it's not just social media, it's everything. Ads, billboards, product placement, that aisle end cap at Target that made you buy something you don't need? Yeah, I'm talking to you, wifey. You know what you did. So today on the ARQIV, we're asking, are your choices really yours? Let's find out. Have you ever heard of attentional zoom lens or perceptual asynchrony? Or the idea that red can hijack your focus even before you consciously see it? You probably haven't, because I know I haven't. And yet these are the hidden tools YouTube creators and platforms use every single day. You scroll, you pause, your fingers hover, and in microseconds, your brain is being nudged or veered, and sometimes it gets hijacked. Not by logic, but by circuits you never knew existed. So in this episode, we're not going to walk you through tips to get more views, but instead we'll reverse engineer those tips, peel them open, and show you what's happening inside your brain when you do click. And then we'll ask, what does this do to you over time? But let's start with the building blocks: attention and perception, the silent filters in your brain that decide what you see, when you see it, and what you ignore. So thanks for joining this episode of the ARQIV. If you're interested in science and technology and the big questions, do me a favor, hit subscribe so you can get more information, more content just like this. Also check out more episodes on the ARQIV playlist. So our visual system is not an open door. It's more like a gated fortress with guards at multiple checkpoints. And these guards, they work fast. You know that moment you walk into a grocery store and your eyes dart to the red sale signs? You see that before you see anything else. That's not coincidence. That's your visual saliency system doing its job, or being gamed by marketers. And the scary thing is, these marketers understand neuroscience better than most neuroscientists. So let's talk about what's actually going on in your brain when you notice something. First, we're going to dive into the attentional zoom lens, because recent EEG and machine learning research shows your brain doesn't just wait to see what pops up, it actively predicts where to focus. Zooming in on features like red, movement, or faces within 200 to 400 milliseconds. That's why fast food restaurants use red and yellow. It's not because they're cheerful, it's because those colors trigger attention and stimulate appetite-related arousal faster than neutrals. Let's talk about V1 saliency and feature pop-outs, because your visual cortex builds a saliency map. It's kind of a heat map for what pops in your environment. Marketers have learned to exploit this. You ever wonder why luxury brands use clean black and white minimalist ads? It's not just style, it's contrast salience. If everything is busy, simplicity becomes the loudest thing in the room. So here's a real-world example. Pick one. Would you rather click on a thumbnail with a red arrow pointing at a mysterious blurred face, or one that just says, update vlog number 41 on a gray background? Yeah, I thought so. Also, side note, going to be changing my title on my next vlog. Studies show that color is perceived slightly before motion, So if an ad flashes red before animating, your brain's already partially sold before the movement even begins. Designers use this to front-load color cues before the full message actually lands. So color isn't neutral. It actually carries emotional weight. In branding, you'll see things like blue, and this typically equals trust, calm. Think of banks and healthcare. And then if you see colors red, think of urgency, passion. These are going to be things that you typically see in sales or fast food. Have you ever seen the color green? It equals health, sustainability. So think of Whole Foods and eco products. The advertisers don't just use color to look nice. They actually use it to steer you, to prime emotion before content. In experiments, red stimuli tend to capture attention more strongly than green, especially when they're tied to emotional content. Other work shows colors can modulate alertness, and blue tends to increase vigilance and performance on some attention tasks. And historically, red has been tied to danger, urgency, so our brains are primed to respond to it. In thumbnails, red borders, red arrows, red font, they do more than look bold. They leverage ancient neural pathways of salience and emotion, and they induce emotional arousal. But the next question is, now that your brain is locked onto an image, what actually makes it click? And this doesn't just apply to YouTube. Now think about this. Do you recall that one weird billboard you can't unsee? Or the perfume ad with no words? Just a model staring off a cliff? Or the cereal box that says, now, 33% more? Because I honestly didn't even know 33% less was a problem. Your brain hates not knowing. When it sees part of a story or a setup without a punchline, it lights up with dopamine-seeking activity. You're not chasing pleasure, you're chasing resolution. Here's another real-world pick. Would you be more likely to engage with the truth about almond milk? Or B, why almond milk is killing the planet and what you can do about it? Now these are the same topics, different brain chemistry. Ads are designed to leave you in that tension space, hinting at danger, mystery, status, or gain. Your subconscious says, I need to know where this is going. And then there's the classic limited time offer trick. Not just urgency, but it's uncertainty. What if you miss the deal? That what if triggers your prediction error network, which floods your brain with attention-fueling dopamine. So when you feel pulled in, hypnotized by a product or video, even a clickbaity article, it's not weakness. It's your brain doing what it evolved to do, solve incomplete puzzles and seek surprise rewards. Which is why even though clickbait can backfire, it works more often than not because your subconscious isn't fact-checking in the moment. It's actually just trying to close loops. But let's talk about words. Not just what's said, but how it's said. See what I did there? Because the titles and phrases you see on YouTube aren't random. They're engineered to press psychological buttons that have been studied for decades. One of the most powerful effects in language is framing. The way information is presented shapes how we interpret it. Saying 90% success rate hits different than saying 10% failure rate, even though the facts are identical. Think about that. Have you seen these title framing hacks? This will change your life. It looks at a positive framing plus certainty. Or this one, you're doing it wrong. It's negative framing plus fear of failure. Or this one, why nobody talks about. It looks at exclusivity, secrecy. And the last one, X versus Y. Which is better? This one's conflict framing. These activate different emotional and cognitive pathways. Especially powerful is the use of emotional valence language. Words with strong emotional meanings like disaster, brilliant, lies, or genius. Now, research using the emotional Stroop test shows that emotionally charged words slow down cognitive processes, meaning they grab more attention. There's also the role of negativity bias, the tendency for negative stimuli to elicit stronger and longer lasting responses than positive ones. That's why phrases like, you've been lied to, or the truth they won't tell you are so sticky. But overuse can actually backfire. A 2022 study showed that too much sensationalism in titles actually reduces perceived credibility, especially in things like education or science-based content. Interesting. So effective phrasing walks a fine line. Enough emotion to engage, not so much that it undermines actual trust. So remember, titles and thumbnails are not summaries. They're almost like promises, and your brain tracks who keeps them. So you've clicked and you've started watching. But here's the real question. Why do you actually stay? I would love to know why you stay. Be a great conversation topic. Maybe in the comments? Really though, because watch time when you're watching isn't just a metric, it's a reflection of neural engagement. In the emerging field of neurocinema, that is a thing now. Wow. Scientists track how people's brainwaves sync up while watching the same video. It's called inter-subject correlation. And the more a video synchronizes viewers' brain activity, the more immersive it feels. So what actually causes that immersion? It's often narrative structure, tension, buildup, resolution, the same ingredients used in stories for thousands of years. YouTube creators, like myself, borrow these storytelling techniques. We tease something early, delay the payoff, sprinkle a little mini reveals or emotional beats throughout the entire YouTube video. We use open loops, promises to explain something later in the video. And that's not manipulation, it's engagement. Your brain tracks incomplete patterns and holds attention until the loop is actually closed. There's also the principle of variable rewards. It's a core feature of addictive systems like slot machines. You don't always know when the payoff is actually coming, so you keep watching, just in case. But let's not also forget there's the pacing in a video. Videos that modulate energy, music, visuals, they prevent habituation. Your brain tunes out sameness. It perks up a change. Retention isn't about not clicking away, it's about riding a rhythm your brain wants to follow. But not all videos or ads follow these same rules. Some win actually by breaking the pattern. Think of lo-fi YouTube channels or Dove's Real Beauty campaign. Or how about this one? The old Apple 1984 ad? Do you remember that? That said nothing and showed everything. These work because they flip expectations. In a world where everything screams for attention, sometimes quiet can just be a little louder. So here's another real-world pick one. A, you have this bright red sale sign, or B, a plain white sign that says, "This won't be here next week." Guess which one kind of feels like a whisper you have to lean into? And this is where authenticity cues matter. When a creator shows restraint, imperfection, or honesty, the brain can interpret that as trust, but not always, but more often than you'd actually expect. It's also about identity-based attention. People click or buy not just because of the product, but because it aligns with who they are or who they want to be. Sometimes the best attention strategy is not to play the game or to play it backwards, because rebellion, when done right, can become a new signal. And that's the good news. But here's the big question that I actually had in all of this. What's all this doing to your brain? Because if your attention is being gamed daily, what are the long-term effects? Because there's actually growing concern among researchers that constant exposure to high salience media, the bright, loud, fast-cut, emotionally loaded content, that may actually alter our baseline attention and reward sensitivity. The way that you can think of it is it's like sugar. Your brain adjusts to high-intensity input. Eventually, subtly, doesn't register. Boredom creeps in faster, focus becomes much harder, and novelty becomes a craving. This in itself can lead to attentional fatigue, dopamine desensitization, and even shifts in working memory performance. But it should be noted that these effects are still being studied, because a lot of the things that we're actually experiencing today is pretty new in the concept. And this isn't actually even the first time we've heard these kind of warnings. In the 80s and 90s, researchers feared television would shorten attention spans. And in the 2000s, it was video games, accused of violence and desensitization and attention fragmentation. And some of those concerns, they had merit, but others were just a little bit overblown. But what we're seeing now, especially with TikTok, Instagram Reels, and even YouTube Shorts, is something different. The removal of friction, the automation of novelty. Unlike YouTube, where you still choose what you want to click, TikTok decides for you. It feeds you content the instant the app opens. No titles, no thumbnails, no pause, just a good old dopamine slot machine. And TikTok's algorithm, it learns you in real time, adjusting not just based on what you watch, but how long you hesitate, whether your pupils dilate, how quickly you swipe. The actual result is shorter attention cycles, more fragmented focus, and greater dependency on external stimulation. There is now a growing body of studies that is now linking heavy short-form video consumption to symptoms of things like ADD, lower sustained attention, and increased delay discounting. That's the tendency to choose smaller rewards over larger ones later on. And while some studies on television and games found long-term neutral or even positive effects, short-form scroll platforms have less legacy data and appear to trigger more rapid neural adoption. So is it brain rot? Not really. Is it rewiring your neural pathways? Absolutely. Because this is the new attention economy. It's not just fighting for your eyeballs, but for your dopamine circuitry, your cognitive architecture, and a sense of urgency. So should you quit these platforms? Maybe not. But honestly, you should know what's happening beneath the surface, because attention isn't just a resource, it's a filter for reality. And whoever shapes that can possibly shape you. And that's it for this episode of The Archive. If you made it to the end, congrats. Welcome. Your brain just dodged a dozen traps. And if you haven't done so earlier in the video, please click subscribe, like, share for those people that might find this story interesting. Until then, scroll wisely and see you on the next episode of The Archive.